Everybody, and thank you all for joining us today to assist us in getting our message out to the public. For introduction purposes, I'm Todd Wilchin. I am the chair of the Lancaster County Board of Commissioners. Joining us up here this afternoon, we'll be speaking momentarily, are Tom Cassidy, City of Lincoln's Safety Director, Pam Dingman, the Lancaster County Engineer, Jim Davidsaver, the Director of the Lincoln Lancaster County Emergency Management, Todd Duncan, the Chief Deputy County Sheriff, Mike Despain, the Fire Chief with Lincoln Fire and Rescue, Shavana Losterer with the Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department, and that's all I have. Just because it stops raining doesn't mean the threat of flooding is past. It takes several hours for rainwater to reach the various creeks throughout the county. Due to the complexity of the storm water drainage system, it is difficult to predict the exact level and timing of potential flooding. I would encourage all residents to prepare for the heightened risk associated with flooding in Lincoln and Lancaster County and heeding the instructions from public safety officials. I have every confidence in them. Lincoln and Lancaster County officials are working closely to ensure the safety of the public. Their safety is our highest priority. We will take questions at the end of our briefing. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Tom Cassidy.
Thank you, Todd. Public safety is our number one concern in any kind of a weather event. Fortunately, we've got some fairly recent experience with flooding conditions here in Lincoln dating back to May 7th of 2015. Although we're not expecting anything on that scale, we still think it's wise to be prepared just in case. Mother Nature doesn't care much about our expectations. So we need people who are in low-lying areas along Salt Creek to be thinking now about what they will do if we need them to evacuate their neighborhood. Those areas are primarily in the historic core of Lincoln, the North Bottoms, the South Bottoms, the low-lying areas in Belmont along Cornhusker Highway. Most people who have lived in those areas for any length of time are aware that they're in a low-lying area, and we need people in those areas to be thinking about what they will do in the event that the need to evacuate comes about. That might mean getting in touch with a friend or a relative who can help with transportation or provide you a place to stay temporarily. And although we're not asking people to evacuate now, and we would do that if the need arises, it's just a good time to be thinking about it, particularly if you have needs like medication, oxygen, mobility issues. You in particular need to be thinking now about what you might do should that need come about. Safety is the most critical thing that we're dealing with here, and the public safety agencies, the sheriff's office, the police department, the fire department are here to help. We can put a lot of boots on the ground if need be and help people that need assistance in getting relocated or getting evacuated, and we'll be prepared throughout the day and night in the coming week to do that as is necessary. Chief Deputy Todd Duncan will be giving some other safety tips a little bit later, but right now I'd like the county's emergency management manager, Jim Davidsaver, and our county engineer, Pam Dingman, to give you an update about our current status and operations.
Good afternoon. I'll start by giving a little background. We've been in a very active weather pattern since Friday. The weather forecasts for Friday into Saturday, unfortunately, were very accurate as far as we were dealing with a storm that produced incredible lightning throughout the day and into the evening on Saturday, followed up by torrential rainfall. So we've been actively monitoring that situation since then. As of early this morning, we were aware that Lancaster County was in a flood watch. That was upgraded to a warning at about 2:15 this morning for a short time. Representatives from the county engineer's shop and the City of Lincoln Public Works were able to monitor the roads and the bridges throughout the county. We were required to make a few road closures, but again, that's on the side of safety to ensure that we're not putting anyone at jeopardy when it comes to those things. Looking at the forecast for the rest of the evening and through early tomorrow, we anticipate little rain through the rest of today, up until about midnight. After midnight through mid-morning tomorrow, unfortunately, we could see an additional 1 to 3 inches of rainfall. The amount of that precipitation depends on the movement of the weather front. So again, from the emergency management perspective, we will be actively monitoring and updating the forecast, and I will keep my community and government partners informed of that should we need to make any additional changes in that regard. I'll allow our county engineer Pam Dingman to discuss the specifics of the gauge readings and how we adjust our plans accordingly.
Thanks, Jim. I'm Pam Dingman, Lancaster County Engineer. Throughout the night and today, we have seen creeks rise. Unfortunately, they are holding steady at flood stage or just a little below flood stage. For example, Roca is now at about 18 feet, 0.16. Flood stage is 19 for that. So that's really kind of where it's hovered all day. It's gone up a little, it's gone down a little. We remain concerned about the length of time these creeks are flowing full. Please, if you see water over the road, do not drive through it. If you see debris on the road, please let us know. We will be picking that up as quickly as we can. I did get a chance on Sunday afternoon to go out and look at several of the roadways and bridges. We did have a lot of tree damage. The gravel roads in particular are very wet and require caution at this time when you're on them. You need to slow down and just be careful out there. In addition to that, I want the public to be aware that we will continue to inspect the bridges on the surface, and we will get back under them as soon as the water goes down to verify that they are still safe to be open to the public. We remain concerned about the bridges and the roads in Lancaster County. Thank you.
Todd, Shavana, do you want to talk a little bit about health risks and safety?
Hi, Todd Duncan with the Sheriff's Office. Like the group had explained earlier, we just have a few public safety tips we want to share. Before I do that, I just want to acknowledge the efforts of a couple of key players so far that have been supporting our operations. The Lincoln Emergency Communications Center, the Lancaster County Emergency Management or Manager, and the Lancaster County Engineer's Office have all done a really nice job keeping the public informed and responding to different hazards that have been reported. I want to reassure the public that our deputies are actively monitoring conditions around the clock to ensure public safety and closing roads as needed. And the message we really want to impress upon the public is do not underestimate the danger of flooding. Actually, more deaths occur from flooding than any other thunderstorm-related hazard, and over half of all flood-related drownings occur when a vehicle is driven into hazardous flood water. So, as the county engineer, Pam Dingman, said, don't drive into flooded waters, do not drive around barricades, and if it makes it easier for you to remember that, don't drown, turn around. Turn around, don't drown. And as far as staying informed, we're encouraging the public to monitor the road closures through the lincoln.ne.gov website, keyword closures. That's lincoln.ne.gov, keyword closures. And then to monitor all weather conditions through the National Weather Service website. And that website also has a series of flood safety tips. So I'll turn it over to Health Department now.
Thank you. As far as health is concerned, the risk for injury during and after a flood is high, and so to protect yourself and your family, just avoid contact with any of the flood water whenever possible. Flood waters can carry dangerous bacteria and debris, and exposure to disease is most likely to occur as people wade through the water. And if people do go in the water and they are injured, knowing your immunization status will be really important. For adults, they may need a tetanus booster if it's been more than 10 years. Usually children, they are fully vaccinated when they receive 3 doses or 2 booster shots if they're on schedule before kindergarten. But again, it's made on a case-by-case basis, and should that need arise, the health department will have more information regarding tetanus if we need to do that. Please do not allow your children to play in the floodwaters. Even though the water may be just knee-high, little small kids can still get swept away and become a danger to them as well. So please don't allow them to do that. And just a reminder that the water from flooded wells should be considered not safe for drinking until it's tested by a certified laboratory. Right now, that isn't a concern, but we just want to make that a reminder that if you do have have wells and they become flooded, that it is not safe to drink, and that we will be issuing more information about that should that become necessary, and how to get your well tested.
Two problems that we experienced back in 2015 when we had our last significant flood event were a lot of people who were playing in the floodwaters, and those waters contain a lot of contaminants. And it may look inviting to go out and try out your new paddleboard, but if you knew the contaminants that were in that water, I don't think you'd be wading in it if you could avoid it. Also, a problem that we have fairly frequently here in Lincoln and nationwide, really, are people that go out into moving water in places like culverts and streams, and our Fire Chief Mike Despain will tell you a little bit about the risks that are involved in that.
Hello. In terms of Lincoln Fire and Rescue, when we look back at historical rescues, our two #1 rescues that we deal with are vehicles that are going into water that they shouldn't go into, and the other one is usually kids playing in the culverts and the ditches and the drainage areas. And so even though they're kind of having fun down in there, just like explained earlier, those people will get swept away, and sometimes debris is coming down behind them and they don't see it, and so that debris pulls them underwater or pulls them deep into the culvert, and then we have difficulty trying to get into them in time to make the rescue. Again, historically, we see the biggest problem is things that are preventable, and so people, usually kids, playing in the culverts and cars that aren't driving around. So we'd encourage people to follow those tips. And then also, just for general information, we do have rescue teams that are available. We do have the ability to get onto the water in certain cases, swiftwater rescue and boat rescue, depending on what happens. And so we are gearing up for those type of activities if we need to, but the best solution is always prevention. So with that.
Thanks, Chief. Stay informed during the evening and overnight, and as the week progresses. A good way to do that is through the traditional news media outlets here in Lincoln. Our radio stations and our television stations and our local newspaper do a great job of keeping people informed on their websites and on their Twitter feeds. You can follow any of the public safety agencies, Lancaster County Management, the Sheriff's Office, Police Department, Fire Department, on Facebook or Twitter, and stay informed. The City of Lincoln's Twitter feed is a great one where we'll post the most up-to-date information, so that's a great way to stay current. I think a lot of citizens in Lincoln were awakened at 2:21 a.m. today by an emergency alert that came over smartphones. Apologies for that, but that's the alert system that we have in the United States. It works quite well. If you don't have a smartphone or don't use a phone or have your phone muted, all of the traditional media, as I said, broadcast media, print media, they'll be updating their websites and broadcasting those alerts as the night progresses if it's necessary. We'd be happy to take any questions from the audience, from the news media, if there are any.
So it sounds like most of the creeks now are below flood stage. If you get 1 to 3 inches of rain overnight, is that likely to put them up above that and cause more problems, or does this few hours of no rain that we're looking at in the evening alleviate some of that?
Well, the few hours of break are definitely going to help us. The reality, though, is in order for Lancaster County, in particular for Salt Creek, to go down, we know that we really need 12 to 24 hours of no rain to get it back to normal levels. We're so close right now, and the other reality is the ground is completely saturated, so all rainfall at this point is going directly into these creeks, and that's where we're seeing these creeks rise very quickly after this rain. The rise was actually, from an engineering standpoint, somewhat fantastic last night, although it's not really what I like to see, because it was the second big storm in less than 48 hours, and so we're really seeing these creeks rise very quickly. I would expect that 1 to 3 inches of rainfall, if that's what does happen tonight, it will have a dramatic impact on Salt Creek and the surrounding areas. That's why we're talking to you today.
Any other questions?
What areas have you seen flooding in so far? I know there were some counties
Okay, so 70th and O last night was the motorist that drove into water. So that was what really kicked off the warning in the night. At some point in the night, and because we don't have a lot of travel necessarily in the night in the county, we don't always find out until morning. Olive Creek Road between Southwest 42nd Street and Southwest 58th Street, about a third of that road failed and slid into the creek. So we have that road now closed, and it will remain closed until we can figure out an engineering solution for it. We also did briefly close 14th Street this morning from Rokeby to Saltillo in the Wilderness Park area. You may recall that we do typically have a lot of closures in the Wilderness Park area, and so that's where Salt Creek kind of widens out. It is all floodplains, so that's to be anticipated to some extent. We watch those areas, and then in addition to that, we had some minor flooding at south or north 112th Street, 112th and Elbow, just south of Highway 6. That's also an area where we do typically see some of the creeks come out of their banks very quickly. So.
What about in the city of Lincoln?
I can talk about that if you want. Yeah, there are some areas inside the city limits of Lincoln where when we have heavy rain, we oftentimes have water over the roadway. Three of those that come immediately to mind are North 48th Street, just north of Fremont. 48th Street goes underneath a railroad right-of-way there between Fremont and Cornhusker Highway, and that often fills with water. The same thing is also true at about Tuesland and Havelock Avenue, where there's another underpass underneath that same railroad line. 40th and Highway 2, where Beale Slough crosses 40th Street, just north of Highway 2. Every now and then the water will get over that. And then another one that we've been experiencing quite a bit in recent years has been 84th Street, between Havelock Avenue and Cornhusker Highway in northeast Lincoln. The key thing was mentioned by Chief Deputy Duncan. If you see standing water, don't drive into it, turn around. You can ruin your car. Worse yet, you can lose your life. Been a long time since we've had a fatality from a flood event here in Lincoln, but it has happened during my career, and we don't want anyone to take that risk. You don't know how deep that water is or how quickly it is moving from the headlights of your car. So if you see water over the road, turn around, take another route.
I think you mentioned Holmes Lake. We do know that Holmes Lake in the last 24 hours has gone up about 5.5 feet, and that's why people are seeing the water into the picnic areas and the parking lots. We have been coordinating with the NRD to determine what the heights of our reservoirs are, because they do have a static amount of storage, and once that storage is full, we have to wait until the water dissipates to be able to continue to provide flood control for the area. So we have quite a ways to go on that storage yet, but it is filling.
Pat, can you think of any other places that we had problems in 2015? Didn't we close down
56 and
O Street?
56 in Arbor.
Yeah, around Salt Creek area was closed, yes, that's correct.
West O.
And West O Street, about Sun Valley and West O, and Pam, 56 on Arbor Road was another
56
one.
in Arbor is a spot where Arbor dips down. It has a tendency that it looks like there shouldn't be as big a dip there as there is, and there's been several water rescues there over the last several years. That's, again, another spot. It's another reason to emphasize, if you see water on the road, turn around, because it's really difficult to anticipate how deep that water is. I heard in the 2015 flood that, hey, Pam, I don't need to worry about that because I drive an Escalade, and your Escalade floats at 10 inches of water, the same as your Prius does. So I just really want to tell people to stay out of the water.
And I just want to point out, and it came up today during our briefing at the county board, that the Antelope Creek, a lot of the measures that were constructed to prevent a major flooding incident are working, and the creek is flowing as designed. So I think that was something that people always are concerned about, because it does run through the city. But I think the prior administrations, both the city, county, and state, did a good job in preparing the city for flooding like this. So I think we are all well prepared.
Many of Lincoln's recreational trails follow waterways as well, and we did have a very tragic incident back in 2015, and it actually happened before the flood event, just an earlier urban rainfall, where a young woman, a University of Nebraska student, Anishwa Day, was swept away by moving water in Union Plaza. So very important for people that are out there, particularly if you're one of those people that goes out and works out in the dark, to be aware that some of the places that might be on your usual route that are along a waterway, like Beal Slough or like Antelope Creek, could be areas of danger. So be cautious if you're out there in the pre-dawn hours working out.
Well, if there are no other questions, we can go ahead and wrap this up, and we'll all be around to talk to anyone that has any individual questions. So again, thank you for joining us this afternoon.